There's a sleeping cat right here. Okay. Made my top 10 list, and now here's my list of the worst films of 2018. Now, this is only the worst of the movies I actually saw, and obviously, you could easily fill up a list of this with, like, direct to Netflix or direct to Amazon Prime, like, garbage that no one wants to watch. But as far as, like, kind of mainstream movies, I think all of the ones I'm picking had a theatrical release. Sometimes it's cheating just to throw in streaming only or direct-to-video stuff. These are the worst that I saw. And I think I paid to see some of these, even. Some of these were free. But these are the movies that I disliked the most. Couldn't quite come up with 10, but I came up with a solid 8 that I fucking hated. Number 8, Truth or Dare. PG-13 horror movie. They almost always suck. 99 out of 100 times they're fucking garbage, and this is no exception. You know, there's a curse, and then people have a weird Snapchat filter that's fucking laughable, and it follows around. It's like a weird ripoff of, like, It Follows meets The Ring, almost. It's bad. But the reason it's so low is because I still had fun watching it, because it's one of those laughably bad movies. It's a movie so bad you can easily laugh at it. I saw this movie on the Thursday night it opened, and the entire audience was openly laughing at it like it was an intentional comedy. So that was fun. I went to see it just out of curiosity, and because it was one of the last weeks that I was still working at the theater, so I was trying to get in as many free movies as I could before I ended up quitting. So I went to see it because of that, and man is it bad. It is fucking awful, but it's so laughably bad. It's so incompetent in what it does. The ending is stupid. It's this stupid curse that follows like a game, and whoever thought of the stupid idea of having people have that weird smiley Snapchat filter face? Truth or dare? And there's even one part of the movie where someone picks dare, and then the demon is like, I dare you to tell the truth about something. So the game fucking cheats. And this movie's fucking awful. But it's one of those movies where you get a couple drinks in you laugh at it with your friends, and you'll still have a good time, so it's still enjoyable on that level. So because of that, it's not that high on the list compared to some of these other pieces of shit. Number 7, 50 Shades Freed. That's a movie I actually made a review of and put it on YouTube the night I went to see it. Went to see it in IMAX for some fucking reason, because I thought it'd be funny, I guess. So 50 Shades Freed is about as bad as the other two movies. The first movie is at least laughably bad at some parts, where it's kind of funny how bad it is. The second one is in some parts more so even funny, and the second one is sort of repetitive about where it's like scene, sex scene, sex scene. The sex scene's always cut too short. The third movie is mainly just boring. It doesn't have as much like creepy, like morally reprehensible stalker stuff, like the great Netflix show You kind of stuff, but playing it off as not being bad. Like that the first movie has, and the second movie. The third movie has probably the least creepy shit about it in that regard, but it's also the most boring and has the most like trite kidnapping plot at the end. And the sex scenes and the nudity are just kind of boring too. They're not as... because at least some of the other movies the sex scenes were kind of mildly enjoyable, even if they were tame compared to what this is supposed to be selling us. And while I had read the first book before I saw the movie, I did not read books 2 or 3, nor do I have any desire to, so I can't compare in that regard. But, yeah. Number 3 is it's just boring. And it was a boring movie I sat through and wanted to be over from sometime in the first act. It's just... no. Number 6 is going to be Samson, the PureFlix attempt to turn an Old Testament story into a Marvel movie, kind of. This one is also one of those movies that needed a bigger budget, but was all partly laughably bad because they didn't have the budget to do a period piece, and had some bad CGI, but also the movie's just kind of wacky and crazy, where you have a PG-13 movie where your hero murders hundreds of people with the jawbone of a donkey. And I understand that some of this stuff actually happened in the Bible, because the Bible is a morally reprehensible book of shitty fairy tales that aren't fit for consumption in either a children's book or a PG-13 action movie. And there's a lot of laughably bad parts of that movie. I did a YouTube review of that as well when I went to see it, so you can go see that for more details about the funny shit in there. But that's another movie where it's bad, but I kind of enjoyed my time because I could laugh at some stuff, or at least I could try and hold in laughter, because I was seeing the movie in a theater with people who were probably not going to see it for an ironic purpose. So, you know. 5 is going to star my old friend David A.R. White. That's right, I quit the theater back in April, and I still have this guy in my apartment. Yes, you're still here, David A.R. White. Oh, yes. Sorry. So, David A.R. White was in my number 5 worst film, God's Not Dead, A Light in Darkness, or God's Not Dead 3. Same kind of problems that the other two movies have, but not as bad. God's Not Dead 3 is actually the least bad of the three, which is why it's only 5 and not the worst film of the year like the last two movies were. Like, this one at least felt like it was trying to make up for some of the really morally reprehensible mistakes of the last two movies. And this one's, the third one's not morally reprehensible. Why does it look like David A.R. White's trying to blow me right now? But, so, it's not as reprehensible as that. The movie's not even reprehensible at all. It's just kind of bad and doesn't really play fair with some of its arguments kind of thing. And it's also pretty boring as well. Also did a full-length YouTube review of this movie, so I'm not going to go too much into it, but I did want to break out my old friend David A.R. White, who you can come see in my apartment to this day. Dale Cooper I bought. This guy I just took from the theater when the movie opened. Number 4, Skyscraper. This movie was just bad. This was just a terribly written, cliched piece of fucking garbage. This was just like, hey, let's kind of rip off Die Hard, but we'll put the entire family in the tower, and we'll make The Rock have a prosthetic limb, so that gets in the way but also helps him. And well, let's also make it PG-13 though, so the action is neutered and watered down. And let's just have the solution to the problem turning a building on and off again, and having like a weird house of mirrors in this like futuristic globe thing. And this movie's just fucking stupid. This is a movie that was just cynically made by studio execs because they thought, hey, anybody will go see any piece of crap we put The Rock in. And they probably greenlit this before Baywatch bombed, or maybe after Baywatch bombed, but also after Jumanji was a hit. And they just thought, hey, maybe the trick is that Dwayne The Rock Johnson just needs to be in a PG-13 movie. And look, The Rock is a really good movie star. He has a lot of charisma. In the right vehicle, he is a really fun person to watch in a movie. This is not the right vehicle. This is a very bad movie that fails as action, fails as comedy, and just fails as a movie. Like, every moment of this movie, I was just wanting to hit myself over how fucking dumb this movie is, and how anyone I know who has seen a movie could write a better screenplay if they were given this 2-line concept for a movie. Die Hard ripoff, guy with prosthetic limb, Google Home smart building. Great. Go write a project for that. Any one of you can come up with a screenplay 10 times better than this finished movie ended up being. But this movie was just made out of cynicism. It bombed because it sucked. That's all we gotta say about it. Number 3, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Look, I liked the first Jurassic World, which is Jurassic Park 4, I guess. That one was fine. A lot of people didn't like that one. I did. This is fucking horrible. The two leads have no chemistry. Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard, I would not be surprised if these two, like, disliked each other immensely behind the scenes. The screenplay is boring and atrocious. I guess because of the fact that people were upset that Bryce Dallas Howard's character wears heels in the first movie, there's like 9 close-ups, I'm a little bit of exaggeration, but like 9 close-ups of the far more practical shoes she wears in this movie. There's a human-dinosaur hybrid that makes a choice at the end of this movie that's just the wrong choice, but the movie kind of wants you to be on its side. Lava, like, only singes a dinosaur and doesn't burn down to its skull. Another character can gently roll away from lava when he's been tranquilized. There's double crosses that you see coming a mile away. There's a villain. This is a movie about a villain taking dinosaurs off an island to sell them for millions of dollars to terrorist organizations and in hostile foreign governments, which really just makes me think, why is buying a dinosaur the best option you have if you want to commit acts of terror? Like why does an army need like a single velociraptor that is not bulletproof? As opposed to like tanks or drones and shit. Why, if ISIS had like a T-Rex, wouldn't their skin isn't bomb-proof. It seems like you could easily kill a giant lizard with like planes and drones and shit. It's a very stupid idea. But also, these animals, they're genetically created dinosaurs, and in the movie they sell them for like millions of dollars when they should be worth billions because they're fucking dinosaurs. They should be worth more, especially if all of these other ones have died on the island they're on. Jeff Goldblum is in it for a glorified cameo and is fucking wasted in the movie. He's just there to deliver the fucking advertising slogan line. And man, this movie's a fucking waste of time. And, the characters have no fucking personality. Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard, they're like blank ciphers. They seem to have kind of chemistry in the first Jurassic World, but in this one, their characters aren't really given much to do. They're just sort of there to help propel the story. And then the movie retcons that John Hammond had like a partner we've never heard of in the last 4 fucking movies, and this movie's just bad. And, the movie ends with dinosaurs loose in, like, California, and it's like, why didn't they just give us that movie? Why did they have to make this middle movie that fucking blows ass? I don't know. This was a bad movie. This is just awful. This is, like, if the first Jurassic World was trying to kind of capture the magic of Jurassic Park, it didn't get there, but at least it was in the same ballpark. This movie fails at being the Lost World Jurassic Park, the not as good sequel that came out in '97. But it's like, you aimed lower and you didn't even reach that shelf. So, I don't know, it made money, they'll probably make another one, it's just, I don't know. And Chris Pratt's getting on my fucking nerves anyway with his Jesus freak bullshit, so I just didn't really care for him in this movie when he has no personality. That was that. Number 2, A Simple Favor. So, when I heard that after the absolutely terrible Ghostbusters reboot that Paul Feige, or whatever his last name is, directed, and I understand that a lot of people, especially guys, hated that movie for, like, misogynist bullshit. I just hated it because it's a terrible fucking movie. Like, no offense to any of the actors or whatever who are in it. Well, what's her name? From Happy Time Murders and stuff. She needs a better agent. I didn't see Can You Ever Forgive Me, though, so maybe she was good in that. Melissa McCarthy, yeah. She's a little grating now, but no harm for the other people. But when I heard that, okay, now he's doing like a thriller kind of movie, like he's doing his first non-comedy, well, that's kind of intriguing. It's like, Anna Kendrick is perfectly likable, Blake Lively, both very likable, charismatic leads. Maybe this will be a good movie. No, This movie fucking sucks, and it's because the movie can't decide what it wants to be, so it fails at both. Like, it can't decide if it wants to be a Paul Feige satire of Gone Girl, where you have humor that you'd see in Bridesmaids or Spy or The Heat, but then it also tries to play itself seriously in some scenes, and it does not work. This movie just doesn't work because it can't pick a fucking tone. And some people really liked this movie. This movie got pretty good reviews and it was a pretty good box office hit. So people seemed to like what this movie was doing. But the thing is, it needed to... You can't mix some of the stuff in this movie that is played dead serious with some of the comedy stuff. It either... I don't want to say it has to be all thriller or all comedy. Like, other movies can mix those things, but this movie tries to be what it is, and then it tries to be a satire of what it is at the same time. Sometimes in the middle of a sentence in the same scene. And this movie feels like it has dissociative identity disorder that way, and it just doesn't work. But I think the reason I had such a visceral negative reaction to this movie is that the movie seems very full of itself. This movie has the tone of a movie where everyone involved thinks they're making an excellent fucking movie, and that smarmy smirkiness of it emanates through every frame of it. Now, you want people to make a movie and feel good about the product they're putting out, but this one feels like full of itself. Like, this movie feels like it's like, hey, we'll show Gone Girl and Girl on a Train, we're gonna make fun of them, but we'll still one-up what they do at the same time. And no you don't. I mean, for what it's worth, Anna Kendrick gets away scot-free in this movie. She performs the role like she's supposed to perform it. But this is also a movie that wants her to basically be playing the normal Anna Kendrick character. Like, imagine Anna Kendrick's character from Pitch Perfect, but then there is a serious flashback to a scene where she loses her virginity to her biological brother. And then it tries to be comedic again. You can't do that. Or a scene where Blake Lively is, wearing a pinstripe pantsuit and is looking very debonair and is doing quips and one-liners. And then it flashes to a scene where she murders her identical twin. And that's played seriously. This movie has a hard time balancing the comedic and the dramatic, because the dramatic is so fucking dramatic that when it cuts to the next scene and tries to cut to humorous, it feels disrespectful to the other scene. It doesn't feel like satire, or it doesn't feel like it's being a comedic contrast. It feels jarring, and it feels like it doesn't fit. Like, this is a movie that feels like it was directed one way, and then a completely different director came in. Like, this feels like a movie that was directed by, a thriller director. Let's say a movie that was directed by Ridley Scott, and then Ridley Scott was fired, and then he was replaced by the guy who makes Adam Sandler movies, Dennis Dugan or whatever. That's how the movie feels. But it feels like they took scenes from both cuts and tried to make a working movie of them, and it does not fucking work. This movie it's almost admirable for trying what it does, but it fails so spectacularly that I just watched this movie in mounting anger over it for the fact that it had the audacity to think it was good at what it was doing, the fact that a studio exec or the producers watched it and thought this movie worked as a cohesive film and that it balanced the tones. This movie is incredibly misguided, and it was just... I may have some lingering resentment over that Ghostbusters reboot, but the fact that Paul Feige took the criticism of that movie, probably dismissed some of the criticism as unfair when he shouldn't have. I mean, yes, some of the criticism of that movie was unfair, and I will give that movie credit for one or two good things it does, particularly with its villain. But it seems like he didn't learn his lesson and then made another terrible movie after it, but he made it terrible in a much different way. I really hated this movie. Like, it doesn't work. So what was the worst movie I saw of 2018? Well, it was probably the one movie I didn't want to go see and almost went to see against my will. It was The Nun. Now, I haven't seen any of the Conjuring movies. I know people really like them, but I haven't wanted to see them, mainly because I don't really like supernatural haunting movies, and two, because the movie is about the Warrens, who are these two real-life con men who are morally despicable pieces of shit, and it makes them look like nice heroes, and I just had moral qualms with that, so I just stayed away from those movies. Also, they seem very jump scare heavy, and just the kind of horror movie I dislike. And I'm a huge horror fan, but it's like just the kind I don't like. But people like them, they became huge hits, whatever, to each their own. So The Nun's a spin-off of the second one, I guess. And my girlfriend was interested in seeing it, because The Nun admittedly had a pretty cool trailer. And her mother also wanted to see it, so I went with my girlfriend and her mother to go see this movie. I didn't want to see it, but my girlfriend goes to a lot of movies that she's never heard of or doesn't want to see for me, so return the favor kind of thing. So I sit through this movie, and I guess it's saying something that all three of us, myself, my girlfriend, and her mother, all hated this movie. It is fucking terrible. Now, I think I ended up hating it perhaps more than I would have otherwise, because the ending is a complete and total ripoff of the ending of Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight. Now, I understand that more people have and will see The Nun than will see a Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight, but it's weird that such a specific ending got ripped off so cleanly, where both movies end with a female protagonist swallowing Jesus' blood, which has been contained in some sort of container or chalice, and then spits it at a demonic entity to destroy it. This seems like a very specific way to end a movie. It happened in this one movie in 1995, a movie that's not entirely successful, but I still like it, and is then ripped off 23 years later? 23 years, fuck. 23 years later in this bullshit spin-off. And this movie it's boring, it's nonsensical. Aside from some basic visual styles which kind of look like a Hammer horror movie, this movie does exactly what you think it's going to do every step of the way. This movie has no surprises. I did not jump once at any of these fucking obvious jump scares. The rules of this nun and this spirit are not very well laid out as far as why it has some powers sometimes and not other times. It is just nonsensical, boring, predictable fucking garbage with some really bad dialogue at some points. And the fact that it just had that ending is so specific that there's no way the screenwriter came up with it by themselves. They completely ripped that off from a horror movie that is beloved by some, but lesser known by the mainstream, so they knew they could get away with it. And at that, it was like, fuck no. And I just... Aside from a couple exterior shots at one point in the movie, with a graveyard that kind of looks like a Hammer horror thing, I can't think of a single thing I liked about this movie. I sat this entire movie either bored or angry, and usually a combination of both. Of all of the movies I did not like that I saw this year, this is the one I had the worst time at. Because at least A Simple Favor, which I think I may have called A Simple Plan a couple times, my apologies to that really great Sam Raimi movie, but A Simple Favor, hated that movie, but at least it was bad in a unique, interesting way. Jurassic World was fucking terrible, but at least it had a couple cool shots of dinosaurs. A couple of these other movies were at least funny. If they were boring, then at least they had nude Dakota Johnson in them. You know, they had like something I could latch onto. This had fucking nothing. This was a fucking slog. This was a 90-minute something-ass movie that felt like it was 4 fucking hours long, and I was so happy when it was over. It was just, a lot of the movies just people walking down dark corridors. That's a lot of it. It is just, this movie's fucking terrible. Now, supposedly, based on my girlfriend and her mother, the other Conjuring movies are not this bad. I know there's 2 Conjuring movies, there's 2 Annabelle movies. From what I hear, one of the two Annabelle movies is good. The other one, apparently, my girlfriend walked out on it, and it's one of the only movies she's ever walked out on. But The Nun is fucking awful. This was this was like direct to Netflix bad, like Sci-Fi Channel kind of horror movie bad. Like, I can't imagine the Asylum ripoff of The Nun being much worse than the actual studio produced Nun. And it's like, this is everything wrong about mainstream studio-produced horror movies. I mean, even with the R rating is barely there. This could have easily been cut to a PG-13, and so with the exception of the fact that it was R except for PG-13, aside from that one tiny quality, The Nun is everything that is wrong with modern studio-produced horror movies. And so when people complain about Hereditary or Suspiria or The Witch or It Follows or It Comes at Night being too artsy or whatever, I'm like, dude, do you like The Nun? Because if you do and you don't like those movies, then go fuck yourself because you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, and how dare you call yourself a horror fan. The Nun is fucking awful. I mean, like, it's like fucking shame on you. James Wan, look, Dead Silence wasn't the best, and I know you've gone off to do like Fast and Furious and Aquaman and some non-horror shit, and you kind of disowned yourself from the Saw sequels. But I know you can make good horror. And I know you didn't direct this, you just, like, produced it and kind of, like, have a co-story credit or some shit, but you should fucking know better. So that fucking sucked. So, yeah, that was the worst movie that I saw in a theater in 2018. Worse than the Christian movies, worse than fucking Truth or Dare. The Truth or Dare, at least I had a good time because I laughed at it. You know, worse than the weird Paul Feige can't decide what fucking tone to do movie. Worse than the lazy fucking Skyscraper and Jurassic World. It was just, So, 2018 overall was a pretty good year for movies. That's why I couldn't come up with a list of 10. There were some movies I liked more than others. There were some that were kind of like near misses or I just kind of felt about. But as far as movies that I actively disliked that I saw, it was the same. So, anyway, that's it. Hopefully 2019 will have some good movies. I just saw Glass. I liked it more than the critics did. Feel like the ending's maybe a bit morally not good, but, you know, these things happen. So, hopefully you get these up sometime in January, or at the very latest early February. See you guys.